Hi, welcome back to the completed ticket challenge. This is the first video for week 2. So this week we're going to stop the bleeding. That means we're going to be focusing on the work that's been recently touched by your team. We're going to make sure that you don't keep getting more and more and more of that work. We're going to take control of that and make sure that that metric goes down. The number of tickets that your team is working on. Make sure that we start completing more tickets than we start. So we're going to do that just with regards to the tickets that have been recently touched, just to make it manageable. Everything that's already neglected, we're going to let it get a bit more neglected. Um, Otherwise, you'd probably just have too much to focus on. Now, anything that's neglected that's urgent, do keep an eye on that. Obviously, I'm not telling you you can't work on urgent stuff, so do keep an eye on the urgent things as well. So last week you did some work to set those neglected thresholds on your Kanban board. So that's how you know today what stuff is recently touched and what stuff is not. You also dragged those recently touched tickets to the top of the Kanban columns so that it's easier to focus on those. Now, your job today is to, with your team, make sure that all of those recently touched tickets are in the correct statuses. So um, you're going to need your team's help for this because your technicians are the ones that know what those statuses, what tickets, what statuses they're in. Uh, and one thing that you could do is just kind of announce that somehow, everybody make sure that your ticket statuses are all correct. I recommend you don't do that though, because every MSP has the policy that technicians should leave their tickets in the correct status. But we actually find that in practice, that's very frequently ignored, and then you get problems like this where you don't know what statuses your tickets are in. So just saying it again is not as effective as holding a meeting. So that's what we recommend that you do is you get your team in a short meeting, 20, 30 minutes maybe, just to get everybody together, go through these statuses, and that's a way to show your team that this is actually really important. And and it could be a change in sort of the culture of the team to demonstrate that we're really serious about this. It also gives you a really good chance to describe Kanban because it could be that your team members have never heard of that before. At the very least, to demonstrate it and show them the columns that you're going to be using, and um, also to talk about some of the guidelines about like how do you determine exactly what status, like what do these statuses mean, and how do you know if a ticket is in one status or the other. So it gives you a good chance to talk about all those sorts of things. Also, you should emphasize that despite that you are sitting down in a meeting to fix these ticket statuses, it's not intended to be something that you do on Mondays. Um, all we're doing today is just making sure that we have a good foundation for all the work that's coming up later this week. But it's not supposed to be a regular thing. This is kind of the constant job of a technician, is to make sure that they always leave the tickets in the correct status, all the time, 100% of the time. It's not something that you kind of fix up at the end of the day, or certainly not at the end of the week. Now, the expectation is that you are always leaving the tickets in the correct status with a note, depending on what status it's in. Um, Now, if that's not happening right now in your team, it could be because you have the PSA tools just make it kind of a burden to actually do that. But now Kanban, everything is right in front of your technicians, and so it should be very easy to do this. Just 10 or 20 seconds of work when they're done to enter a quick note and make sure they leave that ticket in the right status. So it's going to be easy now. So make sure that your team is aware of all those things. It's a good idea to just kind of reset the culture and make sure that everybody's on the same page. So it's a good idea to do that in a meeting. Now, as far as our suggestions about what these statuses all mean, I have some suggestions. One is when you're looking through these tickets, if the ticket has time entered on it already, or if the engineer is working on it now and they need to enter the time, then it's no longer going to be on the left side of the board. It's going to be on somewhere towards the right side of the board in in progress, or could be waiting or scheduled or obviously complete. Now, if the ticket is waiting on somebody outside of your team, then that's going to be in the waiting status or the waiting column, which might have multiple statuses mapped to it. That would be pretty normal. You might have waiting on customer or waiting on vendor or something like that. So make sure it goes in the right status so that it's clear to everybody, and you'll see it there in the waiting column. Now, if the next step to do on this ticket happens sometime in the future because you coordinate it with somebody. For example, you're going on site with a customer or you're doing some after hours work that you agreed on a time with a customer, then that should be scheduled. And you should also have a calendar assignment for that, or a service call, depending on the terminology of your PSA, but it's the same idea. Basically, it needs to be in somebody's calendar, and the technicians will view their calendar uh, to see that work and make sure that they do that work at the right time and day. Now, some MSPs have the practice where they actually use the calendar for everything, even work that doesn't need to be coordinated with anybody. So, like when a new ticket comes in, dispatcher decides which technician is going to do that, and they find a free time in their calendar and plug that ticket in there. So, if that's what you're doing, then use the scheduled status for all of that work. But be aware, that's a practice that we're going to switch before the end of the week, and you're going to not do that anymore. You're going to start using just the Kanban board on its own to tell technicians what's the most important work to do. And we'll explain that really well, and I think you'll see that that method of working has a lot of advantages, and it's going to make your job a lot easier. And now, finally, if the ticket has, if either the technician is working on it right now, or the technician isn't working on it right now, but they have worked on it, and the next step on that ticket needs to be done by somebody in your team. It's just waiting on somebody to have some time to do it. Then that ticket is it's in the in progress status. It's not waiting. It's not scheduled. It needs to go in the in progress column, and that's because the in progress column is more important than being a way to indicate exactly what the technicians are working on at this very moment. It's a way to indicate what work have we started and we haven't finished yet. Okay, because that's the number one goal of this completed ticket challenge, is to get control of that work and make sure that instead of coming here with you know um, maybe 10 or 20 or 30 or even more tickets per technician, which is totally overwhelming. What we want to do is get you down to one ticket per technician, maybe two, or maybe at the most three. So that's why we need to be able to see it all in one column, and why the point of the in progress column is to show you what you've started and haven't stopped yet and is still in your court to do.